Hey guys, welcome to my May reading wrap-up. As I had hoped, birthday month had a lot of good reads. A few duds, a few DNFs as well, but I really enjoyed my reading this month. In many ways I feel like I got a lot of books in, and in other ways I feel like I didn't get as much in. It's that time of year where I'm spending more time outside. This month I've been writing a lot of poetry, which has been great, but has taken away from reading time. Overall, I feel like it was just a great month. So I filmed some clips. I will talk about the books that I read. My hair will instantly grow in the next clip. So let's get into the books that I read, starting with the ones at the beginning of the month. Welcome to the first wrap up for May. This month, I don't know how it's going to play out all month, but it's going really well at the beginning here. I've been finishing books. I DNF'd a book, which has just been a really good choice so far this month and last month. I am so thankful I'm not getting like bogged down reading a book I don't want to read. So let's get into the books that I've finished and DNF'd. The first one though, I didn't enjoy in any form. I did share a rant vlog for it. I didn't mean for it to be a rant vlog. That's just what I was reading, and so highly recommend checking that out. As of filming this, that video is not live, so I feel a little nervous about how it's going to be received, because I'm not the kind of person that normally, rants about books. That's not my platform, that's not what I want to do, but sometimes some books just need to be ranted about. So I've already passed it on to a friend. I don't have a physical copy right now. It is called No Time to Be Dumb by Rachel Jankovic. And the idea behind this book, well, I don't know what the idea is. I think the idea behind this book is for girls to not be dumb and make good choices. But the attitude with which the author comes at this book with is evidenced in the title, No Time to Be Dumb. She's already giving this negative impression of what she thinks of teenage girls. She apparently has 4 teenage girls, and the way she talks about girls in the book is she seems to think that they are all sluts and are just terrible people and they should just do better. And there's many points to the book that I agree with what she's trying to say. I just don't agree with the attitude in which she's trying to say it. She talks about homemaking and how teenage girls should learn how to be homemakers and do these certain tasks. Totally agree. But can we say this in an encouraging way, in an uplifting way, giving some like actual examples other than just 4 pages on how to knit dishcloths? It was a very frustrating read for me, because the idea was good. The execution, not so much. She starts out the book, she calls herself Aunt Lizzie, she pretends these teenagers have written her these letters, and the chapters are her replying to these letters. Well, the girls are made up. Her name is not Lizzie, and these girls just happen to write about things that she thinks they should be talking about. And oh yeah, I thought about this after, now since filming my rant, and it still hasn't gone up, but the feeling that I get from that book, and there are a few times where she's kind of said this in the book, she's talking to these fictitious girls, and they are talking about those girls that come to Bible study dressed inappropriately. And the whole thing makes me feel like we are these high and mighty Christian girls, and those girls down there that, dress inappropriately, do inappropriate things, etc., they're the ones that need this book. But if they are, they're not going to want to read that book based on the way she talks about girls. Like, she thinks that they're down here, and who wants to read a book that is just slamming them? It's so frustrating, because the idea is great. I would love for there to be a positive, encouraging, uplifting book for teenage girls out there, motivating them to, like some of the things she talked about is like learn to set the table, learn to cook. She's really into knitting. Not bad things, very good things for girls to learn. But I don't think we need to talk down on them the way she did. And I felt very offended and on the defense while reading it, and I'm not the target audience. And the teenage girls that I know would, like, judging from how she was writing, would not be the target audience. And so, yeah, just very disappointed and discouraged with that book. I am worried that if it gets into the hands of teenage girls, it will do more damage than good. So I would not recommend it to anyone. But let's get into some better books now. The next one I read is Mrs. Pollifax and the Whirling Dervish. This, I believe, is book 8 in the Mrs. Pollifax series. She is a CIA, I don't know, like gopher. She does things, whatever they need. So in this one, she is going to Morocco, and there are 7 informants that they have in Morocco that she gets their addresses and their pictures for. They think there's a mole, and she needs to verify that they all are who they say they are, that no one has taken the place. And she starts out, and the reason she's supposed to go, they have an agent in Morocco that's supposed to be doing this too, but the man in charge, he just has a feeling that this guy isn't going to be like the kindest person, and they need someone to unruffle some feathers they think are going to be ruffled as they go through Morocco. And so Mrs. Pollifax is posing as this man's aunt, and he is not a nice guy. I read a little bit in that ranty vlog as well. She tells some of the people that he drinks too much, and his mother, she cries, and they're like, oh, the wine, the drinking, yes, the mother very sad. Like, it was funny. This is definitely not one of my favorite Mrs. Pollifax, but still worth reading. The series really builds off of the previous books. People pop up in these books from previous ones. Mrs. Pollifax's like personal life develops, her karate skills develop. It just really works best to read them in order. So I will tackle book 9 or the next book soonish. I don't know which one it is. Don't know if I have a physical copy. Of course, it only goes up until here, so I'm not sure what the next one is offhand. But I'm definitely going to need to fill in the gaps. I'm missing a few books in this series, so it might be a case of needing to like look on thrift books or something pretty soon, because when I go to thrift stores, I keep finding the same few. Haven't been able to close in my gaps. Then I read Murder at the Mayfair Hotel. This was my kindred spirit pick for the month, and I got to buddy read it with her. It was a very quick read. This book is generally free. The ebook is generally free. CJ Archer puts the first books in her series free usually. And so this is a historical mystery. We are set right at the end of 1899. This takes place over New Year's and stuff. So end of 1899, beginning of 1900, the first few days of the new year, I think. And we follow this young woman named Cleopatra Fox. Her parents died 10 years ago. Her grandparents recently died. So she's going to live with her uncle and aunt and 2 cousins. She saw them once 10 years before at her parents' funeral, but her mother was disinherited from a wealthy family, and so they didn't have any contact. So the family's rich, but she didn't grow up rich, and now she's going to live at this hotel that they own. And sure enough, you know, right at the beginning, someone gets murdered, a guest gets murdered, and Cleopatra, to me, is this perfect, like, she's the perfect line of an independent woman, but not an overly independent woman, especially for the time. She wants to be able to work in some way, but not that she's overly feminist and like I'm better than any man kind of attitude, which can really bother me in some historical books. I felt like she was a good balance there. And so she works with the staff a little bit, trying to, you know, because the staff really know what's going on in a hotel. So they kind of can give her some behind the scenes, who's doing what, who was where, etc. She gets to know some of the guests, and I think it was just a good balance of her hobnobbing with some rich people, but then also hanging out with the servants, because she is kind of in the middle of them. And so it's interesting to see her get along with the people that are, you know, in a lower class and a higher class. And overall, I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't necessarily say it was a completely obvious whodunit kind of mystery. I don't think we get all the clues at the beginning. We get some of them, but I kind of preferred it because unlike some cozy historical mysteries or cozy mysteries, you can like often see the whodunit way early. And there were like maybe some slight signs, but I didn't figure it all out until it was revealed, and that worked really well in this case. So that was the first book. My library has a bunch of them on Libby. Thankfully, I still have 2 library cards. My old library card has not expired, and I have my new library card. So I have access to 2 e-libraries right now. So I might pick up book 2 relatively soon. I'm not sure. This is like the kind of series that it might feel a little repetitive if it's read too close together. So maybe in like 2 months, maybe I'll pick up the next one. If you like historical mysteries though, I definitely recommend checking it out. And then also I do feel like the ending has a good setup for the next books, so we'll see where it goes. And then, oh, I read a short story. So Birdsong is a short story collection. It is coming out May 7th, which for me is tomorrow, but by the time this video goes out will have already happened. So it's a collection of short stories. I jumped instantly into Shatona's, and hers is the only short story I've read thus far, but it actually, I didn't know this going into it, is a short story based in the Bookstrings series of hers, which is my favorite series of hers. We follow Milton, who is this guy that usually gets companies out of debt, but in the Bookstring series, he's helping bookstores get out of debt. And in this short story, he comes across a book hoarder. Oh man, this guy's house, he lives in like a mansion, and he sees himself as a rescuer of books. He likes to read them too, but he rescues a lot of books. And his mansion sounds like it's full of books. And I just wish this was real. I really wish it was real. So this guy, he's also been a bit of a recluse for quite some time. He, for various reasons, doesn't like to get out and socialize, and Milton does a really good job of connecting with people through books and bookish quotes. I always feel like, wow, he can just pull out bookish, I think I realize he's a made-up character, but he can pull out bookish quotes so nicely, and I just can't remember quotes for the life of me. But he connects with people through books, and then he always takes it to another level. Like, he is a therapist, is what he is. He's very helpful, and I enjoyed watching him work in this story. The only problem I have is that this is a Bookstrings story, but now I don't have a physical copy to like go nicely with my Bookstrings series. So Shatona, what are you gonna do about that? Are you going to, I don't know, are you gonna write a bunch of Bookstrings short stories and then bind them up into a Bookstrings short story collection at some point? If you weren't thinking of that already, you're welcome, please do that. And if you were, which you probably were because you always have a million book ideas, let me know when it's coming. Okay, I have just been flying through books. I've got 2 more left to talk about. The Duchess of Bloomsbury Street. This one I had not finished yet in my video, my vlog, and I did finish it. So we're 244 pages hanging out with Helene Hanff as she gets to go to London and meet the people that she's been writing to for 20 years, minus Frank, who has passed away. She goes to London for a book signing for 84 Charing Cross Road, and she gets to see all over England, meet so many different people. I love her philosophy. At one point she finds out that whoever it is has been kind of filtering her phone messages and stuff, and she's like, don't filter them. Anytime people want to take me to lunch or out for a meal, let them. The more free meals I can have, the longer I can stay in London. At one point she gets a check for $50 or £50 or something, and she's like, sweet, that's 10 more days here. Someone asked her if she was going to be buying stuff while she was out, and she said no. The price tag of everything here says one less day in London. And I loved that philosophy. I would love to just like get myself to England and then think about different ways to stay there longer. You know, if a person could do that. I often forgot that we were set in 1971. She goes in May or June? June of 1971. Every now and then it was like, oh yeah, definitely dates itself a little bit, but it was interesting to read. She got to go to Oxford and a bunch of different places. She works a bit while she's there. She does some interviews, etc. And yeah, it was good. It's not, to me, it's not at the level of 84 Charing Cross Road, but it was good to kind of continue with her. I do want to read Q's Legacy by her. She mentions the idea of it a little bit in here, and that made me very intrigued. So if you have read 84 Charing Cross Road and enjoyed it, definitely read this. It's like part 2. And the last book is actually a DNF. It's The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels. I was very intrigued by this book. We're in the Victorian era. We've got Cecilia, who's an ideal Victorian lady. She's also a thief. And I really liked the idea of it. I only read, okay, this is just a DNF because it's like personal opinion. Did I even get to page 20? I got to around page 20. No, I didn't even get to page 20. Maybe page 16. And the whole like thief, she's also a pirate, I think, or something, that is just, it's a little bit too extreme, a little too out in the open, whereas I was hoping it would be more subtle, more like the Electra McDonald series, where she is a locksmith but also like breaks into things, you know, something that people aren't super proud of. And this is, it just was a little too over the top for my personal taste. So I think a lot of people would like it, and it's also fantastical. There was one part where they were talking about like flying out of this place, and I thought they meant like let's flee, but I think that the houses that they're in actually fly. I haven't quite figured that part out. I mean, 17 pages in, and so it was just, yeah, the fantastical part was a little too much for me. It felt like it was trying to do too much, and I'm okay with not reading it because I have so many other books to read. So here we are, almost 20 minutes in, and it's, yeah, what did I say, the 6th day of, yeah, it's only May 6th. So it's a good start to the reading month for sure. All right, reading update number 2. Quite a few books, a couple DNFs. I am flying through my May TBR, partly because it's birthday month, so therefore I picked books I was excited about, and partly because quitting books that just aren't working for me is really working. So let's go through these books in the order that I finished them. First of all, Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell. I started this in a reading vlog and then stopped talking about it right at the beginning of the reading vlog, but I did eventually finish this. This is, I feel conflicted on this book. It started out exactly as I expected. We're in Cranford, we're meeting all these ladies of Cranford. The men kind of disappear, and it says right at the beginning, if a married couple come to settle in the town, somehow the gentleman disappears. He is either fairly frightened to death by being the only man in the Cranford evening parties, or he is accounted for by being with his regiment, his ship, or closely engaged in business all the week in the neighboring commercial town. In short, whatever does become of the gentlemen, they are not in Cranford. So we follow a lot of women in Cranford, and they are very, not very poor, but they are on the poor end, but they pretend, oh, you know, they choose these things. They walk home from parties in the evening because the weather is beautiful, not because it's too expensive. And the clothes they wear those materials because they're easily washed, not because other materials are too expensive. Loved it. And then, like, quite early, this man comes into the town and doesn't leave, so he right away defies what I thought was kind of the premise of the book, and then he dies, and then a bunch of people die, and I thought this was going to be more of a light, funny book, and it wasn't just that. And our main character is this girl named Mary Smith. We don't find out her name for a long time. I knew it earlier because I looked it up. I was like, who is our narrator? She is this woman of an unknown age. I have no idea how old she is. She goes to Cranford and visits people. Why? I don't know. But she doesn't live there, but she tells us some stories of the place. And I think I really missed out because of the way it was written. We didn't relate to our main character at all. She was nobody except the person that told us what happened. She didn't do much in Cranford. There was a few times where she did a few things, but for the most part, we're like learning about life in the town without her, and that just wasn't my kind of format. So whereas I think that this is maybe one of Elizabeth Gaskell's most loved books, I feel like I've only heard people rave about it. So far, it's my least favorite of hers. And maybe I went in with the wrong expectations. I mean, I didn't realize what I was getting into exactly. But, ooh, I was very disappointed. Very few tabs considering how much I was wanting to love this. Especially the middle was quite bland. There's some stuff I really loved at the beginning, a few things at the end, and that's it. So that was a disappointment, and disappointing that it was a disappointment. Then I read T.S. Eliot's old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. These are poems about cats that inspired the musical Cats, which I've never seen, but I have heard of. And yeah, I don't know, these poems are honestly kind of meh, but reading them made me want to write poetry. So for that reason, I love the book, but not that any of the poems, I didn't underline anything, I didn't tab anything. There was nothing like, ooh, that's really great. They're just kind of funny, silly poems about cats. One of them is about a cat named Old Deuteronomy. And yeah, I don't know. I'm glad I read it. I'm curious to read some T.S. Eliot that's not poems about cats, but it wasn't overly impressive. And the fact that I paid $4.50 for this tiny little book at the thrift store is a little sad. Okay, there was a bit of, I'm realizing there's a bit of a stretch of not so great reading here. Then I read Sanditon. So I read like Jane Austen's unfinished work. I know there are some people that have taken Sanditon and finished it and fleshed it out. I'd be interested in the future to read that, and same with the Watsons. I'm assuming people have done that with the Watsons as well. Out of her unfinished works, the Watsons and Sanditon, I like Sanditon the least. The Watsons, I felt like, oh, had she finished this could have been one of my favorite Jane Austens. Sanditon, super hard to judge because this is an unfinished work, right? I don't know where she was in the process. It felt very rough. It felt very confusing. I didn't really connect with any of the characters. So the point behind it is we follow this couple that own like this resort at the beach, at the sea, Sanditon, and they have some interesting relatives that are really into weird medical things like leeches and stuff that was a little bit more common at the time. And yeah, I don't know, there's some like funny moments. I could see that maybe it could have been good. I shared a few little clips, I think, in my reading vlog where I I think it was the one where I made my TBR jar and rearranged my bookshelves. And there's some funny characters that are a little bit, there's one character that's quite self-obsessed and it's kind of funny, but overall it just felt very unpolished, which it obviously is, so I have a hard time like judging it for that. But now, I've never read any of Jane Austen's like juvenilia stuff. I think that exists. I've read some of her poetry. I've read her Lady Susan and her unfinished works. I've read her main works. I think like now it's just kind of reread time with Jane Austen. Other than her juvenilia, I don't know if there's anything else of hers out there. Is there? Her poems, I used to have a book I got rid of. They were just, no, it wasn't poems, it was letters. What was it? I had something of hers that I unhauled a long time ago. But love Lady Susan, definitely out of the shorter works, 2 of which are unfinished. That one was by far the best. But I'm glad that I finally read Sanditon and have checked a box there that helps out my classics that the 12 classics I wanted to read in 2025 for sure. Got all 3 of those done. Then I started Dear Mr. Knightley by Catherine Ray. I have only heard really good things about this book. And I DNF'd it pretty early on, like maybe around page 50. I don't remember exactly. Partly because, first of all, it's a library book. It's always easier to quit a library book versus a book that I own. So maybe that played into it a little bit. But mostly, I just really didn't like our main character. Knowing that this is kind of based off of Daddy Longlegs, which is a classic that I love, our main character just really irked me. So she grew up in the foster care system, was living kind of in this group home, and she gets offered, someone's going to pay for her master's in journalism. She just has to write letters to this guy who's saying he's got this fictitious name, Mr. Knightley. And Sam, okay, like I don't know how to say this. She acts like she's on the spectrum, which is totally okay. But I don't think that she is because of the way the characters interact with her. Like I don't think Catherine Ray would have written her that way. I think she's just a little oblivious to people. She has this coping mechanism from being, you know, in the foster care system where she doesn't really let people in, which is understandable. I mean, my 2 youngest are from the foster care system. I get it, but I don't know, she just really annoyed me. And I'm sure there will be character growth, but I couldn't read her character talking to people anymore. And so yeah, I feel bad because I've seriously only ever heard good things, but it just either wasn't for me at the time or just isn't for me at all. So DNF there. Then one of the books I picked, the first book I picked out of my TBR jar was Facing the Dawn. Oh man, I had no idea how much I was gonna like this book. I didn't have tabs with me, so I ended up just doggy-earing a bunch of pages and I underlined things. One time I had doggy-eared a page at the top, and then I also wanted to do something on the other side, so I doggy-eared a page at the bottom. It was a thing. Like, here's one of the quotes. "When life falls apart, God's plan hasn't." That kind of defines this book. So we follow, what's her name? Oh yeah, Mara, which means bitter. Her husband has been in Africa digging wells for the past 3 years, and she's struggling. Her 3 kids are kind of all troublemakers, especially the 2 older ones. The younger one, not so much. And then right near the beginning of the book, it's early enough in the book that I don't think it's a spoiler, her husband actually dies in Africa. And then the grief and the hardships just continue to spiral. I will say at the beginning of the book, I'd like to say almost the first 100 pages, I was like, this might be too much, too heavy. But I continued and it got so good. A lot of Christian fiction kind of shies away from reality and the hardness. Like there's always kind of like a happy ending, which I mean this kind of has in a little way. There is this one part where they're talking, main character's talking about God. Like she goes through a lot. Trigger warnings for suicide and death. she's struggling with her faith, for sure. And she says, but I know your heart. Verse, 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 redemption. Sorrow, 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 Jesus. And I feel like that's how this book is written. Sorrow, 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 Jesus. There's a lot of hard stuff, but the light does win out. I don't know if, when I rated it on Goodreads, when I looked at it, I don't know if anyone that I follow has ever read it. I don't know how I picked it up. I think I just saw it on Book Outlet. Here's another quote. The adventure of loving is like riding a bike on gravel in shorts and flip-flops. Pain is inevitable. Yeah, it's hard, but it's really good. I was so surprised how much I enjoyed it. And I definitely want to check out more of her books, and also just more Christian contemporary fiction. I think I might be in the mood for that. If you guys have recommendations, let me know. And the last book is another DNF. I don't know if it's a permanent DNF or a DNF for in the season, but I DNF'd Guardian. And I don't know, this is the third book in a series, and I didn't remember what was going on. And so part of me was like, okay, am I just not in the mood for science fiction? Am I just not in the mood for a series? Or is this book not doing a good job at reminding me? Should I go back and reread the first two? But I'm currently, after DNFing this, I picked up Supernova, and I flew through like half of it in the first day. And this does a really good job. Also, book 3 in a science fiction series. It does a really good job of recapping the first two books in the first 50 pages. And I think I DNF'd this around page 50 or 60, or I don't even know what it was. I just couldn't get into it. Plus, our main character. So our main character is a recorder. She was raised to be unbiased, but in the beginning of the first book, she ends up kind of getting out of that job. She doesn't really have a name. She's a recorder that used to be a recorder but isn't anymore, because recorders were never given names, they were just given numbers. But she has this love interest, and she always calls him, even like when she's thinking about him, and I think when she says his name too, she says his name. And even like when there's other people around, and it's just like so awkward. I can't imagine like talking about my husband as my Jared all the time when there's people around, or even like thinking of him that way. I don't know, it just makes me cringe. So yeah, I don't know, should I give it another try? Should I press on? I'm going to keep it for now. I'm going to put it on my bookshelf because I own the other two in the series and they would all look so good together. But I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. And I know it's not just a mood thing, because I'm really sucked into this one. And they're both third books in science fiction series. Not wrapping this up today, but probably gonna be done it soon. If you guys have opinions on this, I would like to hear it. But that is all for now. A couple DNFs, a couple finishes, only one book that I loved in the last little while, but I feel like I've weeded out a few that I've been avoiding and have probably a lot of good ones left for the month. That's my hope anyway. Time for another reading wrap up. We're gonna go through the physical books that I have, and then I have some ebooks that I want to update you on. First off, let's start out with a series of unfortunate events. I've got the Austere Academy, and I still don't know how to say it even though I listened to the audiobook. The Ersatz Elevator, whatever it is. This is book 5 and book 6 in the series of unfortunate events. I read books 1 through 4 probably about 4 years ago, and it totally worked just to keep going. Each book kind of stands alone in many ways, but also like is fulfilling a greater story. Yeah, so I read these while doing I read this one right before my 24-hour reading vlog, and read this one in my 24-hour reading vlog, and they're just fun. They're so fun. I really enjoy the narration style. Between this book, the Austere Academy, and Vile Village, which is the book that I'm currently on, number 7, they both have mentioned something to this effect. As I'm sure you know, a good night's sleep helps you perform well in school, and so if you are a student, you should always get a good night's sleep, unless you have come to the good part of your book, and then you should stay up all night and let your schoolwork fall by the wayside. A phrase here which means flunked, or flunk, I mean. This series, we follow the Baudelaire children. There's 3 of them. Their parents died in a fire, and there's this guy, Count Olaf, that keeps following them and wanting them for their fortune. And the narration style is just hilarious. I read the first paragraph of this one in my vlog, and Lemony Snicket is always trying to dissuade you from reading the books and always saying, like, if you're looking for a happy book, pick up a different one. Right here it said, the other book, of course, is the dictionary, and if I were you, I would read that instead. It's a very confident author that can write that. That's like, don't read this book. I just thoroughly enjoying our characters, what they're going through. Not like, I mean, it's not great, but it's so out there ridiculous that it's okay. Lemony Snicket does a lot of foreshadowing. You always know, okay, things are going good for today, but tomorrow it's all gonna go downhill. And that's fun. And then he's always sharing a word and then being like, oh, that word here means a phrase here that means, and then he'll like define the word. I just really enjoy how it's written. So that's those 2 books, and we'll be wrapping up another one next time, I'm sure. The other physical book here I have is Exile. Also tried this on my 24-hour reading vlog. I decided to DNF it. This is the retelling of A Grimm's Tale made Maylene, and I don't know if it was the writing, if it was me at the time, but I really wasn't interested. It is a Realm Maker finalist, Realm Award finalist, which usually means really good things for me. So I'm not sure. It's the first book in a series. Is this a complete DNF or is it a soft DNF? I'm not sure. If you've read it, please let me know. It has really good reviews, so people like it. I'm not certain I'm one of those people, or will be one of those people. And then the final physical book I have is Supernova. So this finishes out the Renegades series, where we follow a girl named Nova in this time where there are a number of superheroes. And there's this group called the Renegades that are currently in charge of the city. They're kind of like the protectors of the city. And Nova's parents and sister were killed by a gang, and she thought the Renegades would come help her, and they didn't. And so she's got this beef against them. She is part of the anarchists who are out to get the Renegades. The very first book, Nova attempts to assassinate the head of the Renegades and fails, and so she infiltrates them. And we follow her through Renegades, arch enemies, and then Supernova. And I struggled because throughout the whole series, I felt like Nova was taking things a little too far. Just personal opinion, I guess I just probably wouldn't be super big on revenge in her situation to the extent that she is, but it made for an interesting series, and I was so curious to know how things were going to turn out in the end, because you care about Nova, you care about people that are in the Renegades that she kind of like becomes friends with, even though she just lies to them all the time. But yeah, I was curious, and I really like how Marissa Meyer wrapped things up. And then the epilogue just kind of blew my mind, and I was like, plot twist, didn't see that coming. And there's not more books in the series. She does have an FAQ on her channel saying that, or not on her channel, on her blog website, saying she might pick it up one day because she did leave it open. She's like, you know, aware of that and stuff. But I want to know now. I want to, I feel like I'm still kind of reeling from that ending and want more. So yeah, a solid 4-star series for me. One of the things I really didn't like is the main character that we follow from the Renegades. He has 2 dads, which just feels like trying to check a box. There was no reason to throw that in there. and that kind of thing bothers me, but it was also like kind of a minor part of the book. So yeah, interesting series. I really like her Cinder Lunar Chronicles series, so I'm glad I've read this. Has she written, I mean, she's been writing some like graphic novels and stuff lately, and I've read her book Heartless. I feel like I've read almost all her books, but I definitely enjoy her writing. Okay, now for the books that I did not read physically. Oh, one of them was SpyxFamily Volume 17. I guess I'm continuing with this series. I thought I was done, but I guess not. So we follow a man who is a spy. He marries a woman who is an assassin, but he doesn't know it, to kind of go undercover. And she marries him because she's worried that she's going to be found suspicious being a single woman, and then people will look on her closely and then realize she's an assassin. And they adopt a girl who is a telepath. And so volume 13, like, it is kind of just a soap opera at this point. Nothing really advances the story. We're just kind of, the main thing continues, but there's just like little things going on. It's pretty enjoyable. I feel like it's an easy enough read that at this point I'm continuing, I guess. Oh, I did finish one more physical book. I forgot to grab it. I read Betsy-Tacy from the Betsy-Tacy Treasury, where we follow Betsy as this new family moves onto the street. It ends up being Tacy. They very slowly become friends. They go on some adventures. Betsy's got a good imagination. She creates little scenarios for them, tells stories, and at the very end they meet Tib. It definitely feels like it's written towards the 5-6-year-olds as the girls are in the book, but I hear that they age as they go, and I'm really curious to get to those. So it was kind of meh, but I'm glad that I've read it. I feel like Kathleen and Kelly would be proud, so I got that checked off. I don't really have much to say. And then I read Unequal Affections. This is a Pride and Prejudice retelling kind of idea, where if you changed things at Mr. Darcy's proposal, this book picks up with Elizabeth's reaction to his first proposal, and she ends up saying yes. So if she doesn't say no, but she says yes, then this book ensues. And first of all, I just think that is just a fascinating idea. I want more people to do this. I want more people to take classics and change things. Except that, like, Pride and Prejudice, she does eventually accept his proposal. So in some ways it's like, it's not that different. We do eventually get there. It's not like the whole story has been changed. But this takes the idea of Elizabeth saying yes for a variety of reasons, partially because her family will be provided for, but she's not just a gold digger. That's not the only reason. But she says yes after he confesses his love for her, which was just out of the blue. She didn't see that coming. And it takes the idea of him loving her agreeing to marry him, and also slowly falling in love with him. It has the whole idea of a marriage of convenience, like that kind of plot line, because especially like in the Regency era, once you're engaged, that's pretty much as good as married. People did not go back on their word nearly so much as they do now. And so she's like, okay, I'm in it. Don't want to live this miserable life. I appreciate the way the author took the book, the whole idea of Elizabeth looking for the good in Mr. Darcy. So yeah, I read that one. I enjoyed it. Like I said, just an interesting idea. I keep meaning to look. I'm going to look right now if the author has read or written more books, because I also feel like she did a really good job sticking with, like, it felt very much like I was still reading Pride and Prejudice. I was tempted to reread Pride and Prejudice after reading this, but I still think I want to read Persuasion instead. So she has, what does she have here? None of her books have covers and they're all older. Oh, I didn't read anything about the author. She's the daughter of Christian missionaries and was born on the beautiful island of Java, Indonesia. I spent most of my first 11 years in that tropical country with only occasional furloughs in the States. I consider myself to have had a high privileged childhood, rich not in money, but experiences. When I was 11, we moved to Zimbabwe, where I lived until I was 16, followed by a year in California and a year in Malaysia. Okay, so she says, Unequal Affections is my only novel so far, but is far from the only Pride and Prejudice story I've written. My other writings can be found posted on my personal blog. I'm gonna have to look that up because she did really well and I enjoyed that. And then I think that's all for the books that I've finished. Let me check my list. Yes, like I said, I'm in the middle of a bunch, but those are the only ones that I'm done. Hopefully I'll have some really good books to update next time. And welcome to the hair chop. Okay, so a few more books to wrap things up with here at the end of the month. I read 2 more books in a series of unfortunate events. We've got number 7, which is The Vile Village, and number 8, The Hostile Hospital. I listened to all 4 of these on audio. Highly recommend the audio. The narration style, writing style of the books, still love it. I think after this they start to get a bit longer, which I'm curious to see if it will feel a little too drawn out, but I'm enjoying it. Thought I would take a break after these and do a different audiobook just for a bit, just so I didn't binge the entire series, but I really enjoyed them. Not much else to update from my previous chatting about the series. An unintentional reread was 1,000 Mornings by, these are poems by Mary Oliver. I realized halfway through that I had already read it years ago and given it 2 stars. Thought it would get a higher rating than that, but by the time I was finished, I was like, no, 2 stars it is. I do have a hold on her Devotions book, which I feel like is her most well-loved poetry collection. I've had a hold on it for a while from the library and hopefully it will eventually come in. I think maybe she's just not for me, but I'm gonna give a few more of her poems a chance before I officially say that. But I feel like, especially the first half, there were some like things I was liking. There was some potential, and then it dropped off and I felt like her poems just kind of were a little underwhelming. And so many people love her, so I'm not really sure what I'm missing there. Then I read The Man Who Was Thursday, A Nightmare. I ended up looking up a summary of this kind of before I read it, or when I was a little bit into it, because I was kind of confused by the book. But we mostly follow this one character. His name started with an S, but I don't remember now. He joins this club of anarchists. They want to assassinate someone. I didn't really understand the whole like reasoning behind it, but he was actually, our main character is actually an undercover policeman. And I don't want to give out the whole ending of the book, so I guess I won't say, but he's trying to, I don't know, not let this assassination happen. I don't know, I feel like it was kind of funny in some spots, but it was kind of like, what are we even doing here, kind of in other spots. From the stuff that I read, there's a lot more themes and stuff to this than I picked up on, or even that I care to get into. So I think I gave it like 3 stars. It was like, okay, I'm glad I read it. G.K. Chesterton is my literary mentor. I've read 2 of his books, I think, so far. Is that all I've done? I hopefully will read more before I pick up a new literary mentor, but so far I think both of them have been 3 stars. Another finish is Anne's House of Dreams. This is book 5 in the series, although it was not the 5th book written. This one was published in 1917. The one before this, Anne of Windy Poplars, was published I think in the 30s. So yeah, it was interesting. Anne gets married, goes to her house of dreams. The first half of this book I feel like it's a little dry, but there is a story that kind of continues through that is really good. I feel like the ending is really good. Anne has some hardships in here that are hard, and I'm actually really thankful that Maud wrote them in for Anne. I'm thankful for how Anne dealt with them. I will go into more details. We will be having the live for this. Is it the same day this is coming out? Yes, if you're watching this video the day it comes out, Monday, June 2nd, this evening, we will be having a live for this. So I will get into more details and more spoilery thoughts then. I don't want to spoil anything, but we meet some interesting characters. We meet Captain Jim. We meet Miss Cornelia, who every like other line that she says, she's kind of putting down men, and she's like, just like a man. And it's done in a funny way. It's not done in a kind of like super annoying way. I mean, it is kind of annoying after a part, but it's mostly funny. It's mostly funny. Yeah, and then we meet Leslie Moore, and my one thing is that like Gilbert really isn't in these books now, and honestly he wasn't really in the beginning ones much either. I came to that realization when reading this one. I feel like I miss Gilbert here, but he didn't have a whole lot of lines in the previous books either. I feel like this is kind of the bridge book. This is where Anne goes from being the Anne from the beginning books, the kind of a little bit more carefree, happy Anne, and then we get into the ones where she kind of disappears from the books and it becomes more about her kids. So it was good to spend some time with her. We could already see her like pulling away and getting less of Anne. Lots of good lines though, lots of things I underlined. Like I said, I'll be talking about that more in the live. If you miss it, you can always watch the replay. So that was also a reread. And then another reread was Adorning the Dark by Andrew Peterson. This is thoughts on community, calling, and the mystery of making. This is a book that I just adored the first time I read it, and I mostly adored this time through, although I realized this is a lot of it is a memoir and him kind of name dropping these singer-songwriters that I don't even know. And was like, I think I'm supposed to probably know who this person is, but I have no idea, nor do I care to look it up. But he gives a lot of advice for people who are creative, specifically singer, songwriter, poet, writer people. But I mean, it could be applied to every kind of creative endeavor. And the first time I read this, it really inspired me to write poetry more. But I didn't. I was just like, I'll pick it up after I finish it, and I didn't, and then I kind of didn't. But this time I would pause every now and then whenever I would feel a burst of inspiration and I would write some poetry. Definitely the way to do it. Lots of good stuff in here. He quite reminds me of Austin Kleon. I feel like they're very similar. I don't believe that Austin Kleon is a believer, but just even the fact that they both have these little cabin type properties on their property for them to work in, a little office studio type thing, and just the different kinds of creativity. When I look at Austin Kleon's, I really like his Instagram stories. I feel like that's very similar to Andrew Peterson, how he writes in his life and stuff. Really good stuff in here about being a creative and being a Christian, and is work by Christians, Christian like art or work, or what makes a piece of work Christian. And yeah, I really enjoy so many different things. The absolute favorite thing for me is right at the beginning in the preface. He talks about calling. That calling, as I understand it, is to use whatever gifts I've been given to tell the truth as beautifully as I can. And ever since I read that, when I first read this book, I have taken that as my personal life motto. Tell the truth as beautifully as I can. So it is a very inspiring book, but there are lots of parts that don't apply to me. I didn't care to go listen to Rich Mullins music, although I did finally look up Rich Mullins this time. He really likes Rich Mullins. Another book I finished is Live Your Truth and Other Lies by Elisa Childers. She was part of Zoe Girl. That's how I know her. She also wrote, what's the other book I read by her? The Other Gospel? I'm not sure if that's the title right now. I enjoyed that one. So this is exposing popular deceptions that make us anxious, exhausted, and self-obsessed. So she goes through these lies that society has kind of told us, like live your truth, you are enough, you should put yourself first, authenticity is everything, you only have one life, God just wants you to be happy, you shouldn't judge, etc. And she talks about like what is the actual truth. We've been given this lie, and what are we actually supposed to be doing and believing? And I feel like it was good. It was nothing earth-shattering for me, but I think this is a book that needs to be out there because there are so many people, believers included, who are getting sucked into the lies that society is telling us. And so I feel like this is really good. My only real complaint is that I feel like she picks on a few different authors in here. I am totally for calling out people who claim to be Christians but are not sticking with what the Bible says. Totally for that. But I feel like there was like 5 people that she constantly took portions of their books and things that they said and harped on them. And I think it's important. I think these people should be called out, but it would have been nice maybe for there to be more variety so we aren't just picking on these people. And I think I also struggle with when people, like some people's social platforms are purely just saying what other people say wrong, like focusing on the negative. And once again, I think there's a place for that. I think it needs to be done, but I don't like it when it's people's only platform, and I don't feel like that is hers at all. But in this one, I just felt like she could have quoted from some other people, because there's more than just 5 people that are off base. So I would have liked that a little better. But overall, I think it's a good book, and I think it needs to be out there. I just realized I forgot to grab another book, so I'll be right back. Okay, another physical book. Actually, I listened to this on audio, but I own the physical book, The Wednesday Wars. I have only ever listened to this book. My plan was to reread it this year and actually read it physically, but you guys, the narrator is so good. For someone that does not prefer audiobooks, every time I do this on audio, and it's so good. That obviously says something. So we follow Hollinghood in here. He is in 7th grade, and he has decided that his teacher, Mrs. Baker, is out to get him. We are set in 1967. Vietnam War is going on. There are so many different threads and themes going on in this book. Carrie D. Schmidt does that so well. This is at least my 3rd time reading it, if not probably even more, and I'm not a big rereader, so I think that says something. So Holling, because of his religious beliefs, he is alone with Mrs. Baker every Wednesday afternoon. The Jewish kids go to something and the Catholics go to something, but I think he's Presbyterian, and he's the only one in his class this year that is, so he has to stay with her, and she seems to be out to get him because she has to spend the afternoon figuring out something for him to do. But she ends up getting him into Shakespeare. Like I said, there's themes with like the Vietnam War going on. His sister becomes a bit of a flower child. His dad is an architect, and he's really big on making sure that Holling is not creating a bad image. He wants to get all the contracts that he can, so he's always like making sure if someone has a building that needs to be built or might in the future, that Holling is, a very respectable child. And there's just so many things going on in this little book, and this always makes me want to read Shakespeare, which is important. Like that's if a book can do that for someone that does not like Shakespeare, I think that's a really good sign. I have raved about this book over the years. My plan is probably to read the companion novel Okay for Now in June, even though my TBR is big enough already, but I think I'm going to do that. Highly recommend this one and Okay for Now. And then my daughter and I both say that the next companion novel, Just Like That, does not even exist. Carrie D. Schmidt kills Hollinghood before that book. And it breaks my heart because this is like one of my favorite book characters of all time, and he should never die. So yeah, and I think of Gary D. Schmidt a little bit as like Brandon Sanderson for historical fiction, middle grade historical fiction. He takes characters from his books and he intersperses them in other books. Even like books that are not part of the companion novels, he's got little threads here and there. My daughter's really good at picking up on them because she reads his books, rereads them over and over. Okay, I think I have 2 more ebooks. The first one is Calculated by Nova McBee. So I was reading this one in my birthday vlog maybe, and I just got so sucked in. So we follow Josephine Rivers. At the beginning of the book, she's 15. She's a math prodigy. She's just graduating, I think from Harvard, with her PhD at the age of 15. Super smart girl. And then we flip to her being 17, and we find out that at the age of 15, she was going to go to China for a few weeks to work with this program that hires prodigies to solve financial problems in the world or something crazy out there. And she ends up getting kidnapped. And we slowly figure out what happened to her in those 2 years. And I feel like it's so well done. For the first bit, you're like, okay, like I know that I'm missing things and it looks like I'm supposed to miss things, but I'm kind of confused. But also I'm completely sucked in. And there's just a point where you're like, oh man, I'm so in for this. So that is why I plan on reading the next book in June, because I cannot stay away. I give this 5 stars. I don't want to give away too much because I went into it not knowing much and I loved it. So it is often classified as science fiction. Her abilities are a little bit science fiction-y. That is the only science fiction. So if you don't like science fiction but you're like interested in it, I think this is a good book to start with because it has a little bit, but you're not going to feel like, oh man, I'm in space and there's all these things that I don't know. It's not like that. And they're supposed to be making it into a movie. So I think that will be amazing. And then just looking at my list here, I think my last one was Dearest Josephine. This is a kind of like a 3-section book. So we also follow a character named Josephine. This really messed me up at first. She is modern day. Her father has just died, and he just had this place in the northern part of England, like a huge mansion-y thing that he wanted to fix up, that she's gonna go fix up. Sucks be her. No. So she goes out, I don't know, northern England, kind of remote, to renovate this house. This house isn't big enough, mansion probably. And while she's there, she comes across these letters written in 18-something by a guy to a girl with her exact same name. She finds these in the desk in the study. So we flip from modern times to these letters, and in the letters, this guy Elias says he met Josephine, he wants to write her, he fell in love with her in this one meeting. He wants to write her letters, but he doesn't know where she is. And so he's doing like sending out inquiries, trying to figure out where to send these letters to. And so we're present day, we're with the letters, and then also while Elias is trying to find Josephine, he writes a novel about a guy named Elias who is looking for, who met Josephine, and then there's similarities to his own story, but they're different. So it's about a guy named Elias who met Josephine, and she ends up kind of coming into his life, I don't want to say too much, in a more daily basis. And so we've got these 3. We flip from modern to the letters to this novel. My only complaint is the letters and the novel, I kept getting very confused because in the modern day, Josephine went by Josie, so that was a little easier. But in the letters and the novel, both of the characters' names are Elias and Josephine. And then because the stories are kind of similar, but like also not like just unsimilar enough, dissimilar enough, that it's a bit confusing. So I kept being like, okay, what's the storyline of this one? But then it was very interesting to see how it all wrapped up and ended, because Josie, present day, is like, this Elias guy, he knows things about me, things that he shouldn't know, and he was writing this like 150, 200 years ago. how does he know these things? And so it was interesting to see how that played out. Obviously, I won't give any spoilers. But yeah, wow, I think I read a lot of books. I didn't realize how many ebooks I had read, and I have my stack of books here, and this is not all of them because I put some of them on my bookshelf already. Although there is some DNFs, but it was a very good reading month. Excellent time reading lots of good books. Probably helps that I read some middle grade too. Makes it a little easier, but I would love to hear, have you guys read any of these, loved any of these? Should I press on with some of my DNFs? Please let me know. And let me know, what were some of your favorites from May? Anything that I need to put on my TBR like ASAP? I would love to know. Thanks again for hanging out with me for another month.